Hi, welcome to the Earth+Flax studio. Today we are here to make a custom linseed oil stain. Now a linseed oil stain is made with any linseed oil paint color. This is the Ottosson burnt umber and a purified linseed oil. We're going to be using the Viking purified linseed oil to make our stain today. And a stain is a very versatile finish. It can be used for interior applications as well as exterior applications. So if you check out our side table video, you'll see our use of a stain in that context. And you can also stain a big old barn, for example. So I'm going to try to keep our sort of stain directions as general as possible so it can be applied for all these levels and types of projects. We are going to be staining a handmade tub caddy that a friend made for me. I believe it's probably poplar, and we're looking to get it a little darker, a little more dramatic. So it's going to be a light stain, but we want some pigmentation. So the burnt umber will be a relatively small ratio to our purified linseed oil. We'll apply that, and we can leave as is, like any linseed oil stain you might make. Or you can top coat it with the linseed oil wax for interior applications, or even the linseed oil varnish for interior exterior applications. So our next step is really just to discuss how we are going to make our stain. We're not making a large quantity in this case, but I want to talk a little bit about strategy. For a small quantity, of course you can just use a measuring cup. I like to use a recycled glass jar, make sure it's nice and clean and dry, but something with a good tight lid so that you can save your extra in case you want to do a second coat. And you just kind of decide, what ratio you want to start with. Some folks like to start with a 50-50, a 30-70. For us, we're going to even start lower because I know we don't need a lot of pigmentation. So it might just be 10-15% linseed oil paint to the oil to get the color we're looking for. If you're going to do a larger project, the exterior of a structure, you want to keep your ratios consistent. So you can take a larger container, a 5-gallon bucket, mark your ratios, for example, out so that you can repeat that over and over again. You can even go larger than that and do a larger percentage. The key here is to make sure that you mix enough to do your whole project or the whole side of the barn or house that you are staining. So our next step is to make sure our linseed oil paint is mixed. No matter the size, you want to make sure that your paint is fully incorporated, the oil and the pigment is evenly distributed before you go to mix with your purified linseed oil. For those who are new to linseed oil paint, it has real pigment in it, so your oil may settle, or the pigment may settle at the bottom, and the oil sort of suspended above. For a sample size or a 1 liter, pretty easy to hand mix like I am doing now. But if you are doing a larger quantity, it is not economical. So use a stirring attachment for the drill to incorporate your paint before you make the stain, as well as mix it well once you have created your stain. So you can see that the pigment is the paint is pretty nice consistency, nothing stuck at the bottom that I can feel. I think we're ready to make our stain. So I know that you can be as particular about this step as you would like. Get a measuring tape, measure out your proportions, even on some small project like this, or you can kind of eyeball it. That's fine too. So I'm going to do approximately a 1-to-3 ratio, mark it on my jar, and I can always adjust as I need. So as you can see, I'm about where I was looking for. And if we switch over to our Purified Linseed Oil, our marker is about here. I can actually see it through the glass, another good reason for using glass when you can. And then we're going to use our same mixing stick. And I can already tell I probably am going to go with a little more oil. Keep in mind, linseed oil paint, highly pigmented, a little goes a long way. Mixing a stain really takes no effort. There's no real resistance like when you mix the paint. Doesn't take long to incorporate the two. You do want to mix well before each use, just to make sure not too much settling has happened in between work days. And we already have the beginnings of a linseed oil stain. So I grabbed a scrap piece of wood. Again, you want to make sure that the wood type is similar to what you will be staining because we want to see how the pigment will impact the wood that we are staining. So as you can see, pretty dark. Often people are sort of surprised the tones of different types of wood that come through once you apply the oil or you apply a stain. Sometimes it's red tones or yellow tones or even green tones. So always an excellent idea to do a sample first. And as you can see, the stain is soaking in and kind of highlighting the wood grain and the striations in this piece of pine. So I know that I want to go a lot lighter. So I'm going to probably double up on what the oil in the ratio. And that'll give me something a bit lighter because again, we just want a little bit of pigmentation. But it could be, you know, if it was a red paint, this would be a really, you know, 30-70 ratio of a red stain or a blue stain or a green stain. So again, this is sort of a wood colored stain that we're doing today, but the same principles, the same idea can be used for any color to create a wide range of, you know, stain opacities. So I'm going to check out where my little marker was, and I'm going to double up on that. We're being pretty flexible today. There's no stress. This is for a fun project. You'll want to be more exact. The larger and more complicated the project is. If you keep your can lids clean, which I'm very bad about doing, but I know it's a good habit, then your lid will go on as tight as possible and you'll have less chance of air getting in and slowly drying out your paint. It takes a long time, but look how nice and tidy that is. Another little trick for storage, you can blow into the can lightly and displace the oxygen. Put your top back on, and that will also help avoid any skin forming in storage. Okay, so we have our custom stain, mostly oil, a little bit of paint. Good habits for staining. You know, it's pretty forgiving, but you do want to watch out for drips and over applying. We're applying a very thin, even coat, and we can always sort of let it soak in, especially for furniture applications, interior applications like this. We can apply, let it soak in and buff off excess, you know, make sure there's not a bunch of stain sort of pooling in the corners and edges, things like that. But if you're doing a larger exterior architectural application, you would just go ahead and stain and work, you know, right to left, up, down, based on the wood grain, continuing from one board foot to the next for consistency. So I'll do my best for you to see, and you should see how the stain soaks in pretty quickly. Since it has a little bit of a longer dry time than a lot of modern stains, It's pretty forgiving. I'm not going to worry too much about brush strokes or anything like that at the moment. I can come back and brush them out, wipe off excess. I don't need to rush here. It's mostly just trying to create an even distribution. And since there is absorption, as long as you brush out the drips, generally it's a really easy application process. I have a few fills with the linseed oil Rubinol filler. They might show through a little bit of the stain, but I'm not worried about it. Avoid overloading your brush. I could also use a clean cloth for this project. And that's just about remaining tidy. We've finished application. We've applied one thin even coat of our custom burnt umber linseed oil stain across all surfaces as best we can. We have brushed out any drips that we visibly can see. And we're going to leave this to dry. Generally, a stain can be dry to the touch within 24 hours. I generally say, hey, wait 48 hours. Again, most of your oil is soaking into the surface. You have very little surface buildup here, and that's why you will generally have a pretty fast dry time. But do make sure you have 60-degree or warmer temperatures. If you're working inside in a workshop or in the house, try to have some air circulation for a good dry time. And then after we have achieved a dry surface, we can decide, do we want to go darker with another additional coat of our stain, or is it ready to go? We can leave a stain as is. It is a finish all by itself, or do we want to top coat it with a additional surface protection? For interior, we have the natural linseed oil wax, which we'll probably use for this since it's going to be in a bathroom. We could also use a linseed oil varnish, which is an interior-exterior finish. It really just depends on what the project is, what your personal preference is. Now we have plenty of our custom stain left over, and that's part of why we want a jar with a good lid. This won't go bad. You can use it for future projects. You just want to make sure that you have a tight lid so air can't get in. If air can get in, eventually it will start to polymerize, it will start to dry. You might be able to peel off the skin that forms, discard, and mix up your stain and still use it. But again, if we have good storage, it can last for a very long time, and you can continue to use it for other projects. You can blow into the jar and get your lid on tight, and I do recommend labeling what the stain was, what the ratio was, what you used it for maybe, just as good practice. And as we're talking about best practices, another thing to keep in mind is if you ever use a rag for application or to buff off excess stain, that's a common technique. And you end up with oil or paint or stain-soaked rags. Always a good idea to have a little bit of water handy and pop your rags, paper towels, anything with your oil in it, so you can dampen and dispose of it later. It's been about 48 hours, and we have a completely dry to the touch linseed oil stained finish. I think it turned out pretty nice, just a warm sort of wood colored look to it. And I can leave as is. Remember, linseed oil stain is a finish all by itself. Because we're going to be using it in a bathroom, I'm going to top coat with the natural Viking linseed oil wax. Just give it a little bit more surface protection, a little bit more of that moisture beading sort of surface. And I also could top coat with the linseed oil varnish. The stain acts as your sort of primer, and then you build up a few coats of varnish if you like. That is appropriate for interior, exterior. So we've got a nice dry surface. I'm going to now apply my final coat, and we're very close to being finished with this project. Now I've applied a relatively thin, even coat of the natural wax using a clean cotton cloth. Paying close attention to the corners and edges. We want an even distribution of the wax. We're going to let it sit for 15-20 minutes, and then we are going to come back with a clean cotton cloth and buff off any excess. Then we'll leave it to dry fully, and we're pretty much done. We've waited 15-20 minutes here, and we're ready to buff off the excess wax. And I'm just using a clean cloth, and I'll work my way around the different surfaces to remove the excess wax before we leave to dry fully. And we have finished buffing. We're going to leave it to dry, and that's all there is to a custom linseed oil stain. In this case, we top coated with the natural linseed oil wax, but as you can see, it's something that can be useful for interior applications as well as much larger exterior applications. If you have additional questions, feel free to leave a comment below or email us at info@earth+Flax.com.